Hey everybody, this is JD here. Welcome to my tutorial. I'm going to give you a glimpse into how I made that sound that you heard in the beginning of the video here, and hopefully you can make something similar on your own board if you feel so inclined. I'm going to go over, just give you an idea about what's on my board, because it's always fun. I love checking out other people's gear and seeing how they get the sounds they want. It inspires me. Hopefully it'll inspire you too. We're going to talk about just a little bit about what I'm using, and then I'm going to break down the preset you just heard, the patch you just heard, into its individual components, so you can hear what each pedal does. And again, when you're hearing the individual pedals, you'll hopefully find something on your board that you can get a similar sound with and chain these all together like that. And then I'm going to also go back and stack the effects, so you can hear how each one contributes to end up into that final result there. So hope you'll find this helpful and you'll enjoy it. And here we go. Let's get into the rig first. I should also mention I'm not using a guitar here. I'm playing this on bass. I'm a bass player. I've been playing for about 35 years. Dabbled in guitar. When I first started doing the pedalboard thing, I was doing both, but I figured the easy solution would be just get a 6-string bass, and this is what you're hearing. This is what I use for my board. This is a 6-string made by a luthier out of I think Orlando, Florida, Cliff Boardwell. Cannot say enough nice stuff about this guy and his basses. But anyway, that's what's making my tone generator. Basically, I'll also play some fretless sometimes, and I have a 6-string fretless on the way too, which ought to be a lot of fun. So anyway, into the board. Okay, so the rig rundown here. It's a Temple Audio Trio, the 43, the 41, whatever the largest one is. That's what the pedal board is. Under it, there's two Voodoo Labs power supplies, the kind that just came out. I can't remember the name, but they're tied together. They chained. And then there's a stereo DI that takes the sound from the board, sends it out some XLRs, which goes to my interface or my amp, which in this case would be two QSC K8.2 speakers and an EV subwoofer, 15-inch subwoofer. I find that when I first started out, even playing it through a good bass amp, you just don't get the frequency and the space that I think that I need it to sound right to me. So, and this thing is still small enough and portable enough. It's smaller than a lot of bass rigs I've carried over the years, and it sounds really good. But anyway, so the utilities on the board. Oh, and under there, the first thing in the signal chain is a Broughton high-pass filter. It's set at 40K. That so I got an American Loopers, I think it is, bypass looper, 10 channels, has 6 mono, 4 stereo. The EQ Connect to be the brain over here. That you can select the various presets on the pedals, and you can create banks of pedal presets, which is really cool because in a sound like this, I got all the pedals where I want them. I know what the presets are on these individual pedals, but then I can save them as a group, so I just hit this one button here, and I get everything where I need it, provided you have the right things turned on your bypass looper. After that, the disaster area smart clock for tempo sync. Disaster area MIDI baby sends commands over to the singular sound Eros looper, which I use a lot, but I'm not using on this particular sound. Then, the utilities. Oh, can't forget this. Okay, so we've got a volume pedal, boss, Moog, expression pedal. Then the stereo buffer plus by Empress. That thing is great. They just recently stopped making it, but it has I think it has a buffer on both ends. You can configure it a billion different ways: stereo, summing, AY, AB. I use it for the boost function mostly, and the buffing. That covers all the utilities. So, as you know, when you lay down these kinds of textures, you need some sort of bass pad. I don't mean like bass frequency, but like, what's going to be the foundation that you're going to modify and modulate and mangle. I have 3 pedals like that. The first 3 channels on the mono chain, the Eventide, I always say that. Electro Harmonix Mel 9. It's the Mellotron emulator. I'm a Mellotron junkie. And but even if I wasn't, I'd use this pedal because it gives you some really nice long pad-like things that you can really modify and get some great sounds out of. Second one's a Meris Enzo. That's a great synth pedal. You can do all your tweaking right on the knobs. You don't need a computer or anything for it, and it tracks exceptionally well. Last one is the C4 synth by Source Audio. That's got a billion presets in it. That's the one I'll be using for this particular sound. and I'm using like a pretty simple. It's not like a sub bass sound, but just kind of a low bass synth kind of tone with a quick attack and a short it's a pretty short note, not very sustainy. And then the last pedal in the mono chain right now is my dirt pedal. That's the Source Audio Aftershock. I don't use a lot of dirt in my sounds. I'm more of like a Steve Roach, Brian Eno kind of ambient guy. But when I do use it, I'll use it on the EBO, especially on fretless. It sounds really nice. Then starting in the stereo chain, we've got the Boss MD500. That's the modulation do-it-all pedal. I use a effect on there called overtone for this. So when I combine this high overtone this thing creates with the low C4, it gives you a nice wide range, high and a low sound for your sound here. Then after the MD500, there's a chain of 4 delays. I'm only using one of them right now. There's the Particle, Red Panda, that's the granular, Source Audio Nemesis, Strymon El Capistan, and the Maris Polymoon. Now what's cool, and this is my first little tip here, if you didn't know this, you can get really nice washy textures from putting a really busy, complicated signal, complex sound through a big washy reverb, and that's the trick to this particular sound. And I do this with a lot of other sounds. You could take an arpeggiator from one of the synth pedals. You could use a pattern tremolo, for example. On the Boss has one of those, but something that's busy. You could even make it really busy and notey and everything. Have it go all over the place. But when you put it in the Polymoon, and it does that weird little LFO shaping thing that this thing does, because there's something on this pedal that lets you apply an LFO to like either the early or late reflection of the delayed signal, and it's got different shapes, and some of them you can get really choppy, and it affects the pitch and everything. So you'll hear that when I do the run through. So you got this busy signal going now, and then that goes into the Eventide H9, and I have a really thick black hole type patch on there. I mostly use the Eventide H9 for reverbs and delays. I like some of the other stuff on there too. I'm not a big fan of the synths on it because I don't think they track really that well, at least on a bass. But yeah, so when you do that, when you get that busy arpeggio type thing going into the big wash, you get this like undercurrent, like this movement, this texture that doesn't it's not distracting, because when you're going for that more like Eno-ish kind of wash ambient, you don't want something to leap out and distract you from the overall mood you're feeling. And that's a really good effect, way to use the two effects together. After the Eventide, the last one in the chain there is the Maris Mercury 7, another great reverb pedal. I use it for reverbs, but I often use it like even with a minimal reverb setting. It's still in stereo mode, adds a really nice wide space to the overall sound field. And sometimes I'll hit it on to sound pretty dramatic. I don't know how well you'll hear it depending on what you're listening to, but in the room here when I'm doing it, when that comes on, it doesn't really make it more, doesn't reverberate more. It just widens it a little bit. And I also have at the end there a Boss EQ200 for just tweaking things on the fly. So that's the rig. Let's get down to the sound. Okay, so that's it. Hopefully you were able to figure out what I was doing there to some extent. Like I said, the presets, like I said, it's that's why I gave you the individual pedals, so you can listen to maybe how you can get something similar with your own little twist on it out of something you have that might be a similar pedal, and you put it all together there. So this was my first YouTube video. Hopefully it didn't go too badly. 1,000 takes later, he says. And like and subscribe, I guess is what I'm supposed to say here. Any questions or comments or anything like that, please just leave them in the comments below. And have a good New Year and stay safe.